Hello class, and welcome to section 11.1f, where we are going to talk about appropriate measures of central tendency. By the end of today's lesson, you will be able to identify outliers and you will be able to decide which measures of central tendency work best for a set of data. So an outlier is a piece of data that is much greater or much smaller than the rest of the data. Sometimes these are also referred to as extreme values, but as a general rule, we're going to go ahead and call them outliers. So, first thing we're going to do is identify the outlier. So if we're looking at the different lifespans of these animals here, we've got an elephant, a dolphin, a chimpanzee, a tortoise, a gorilla, a gray whale, and a horse. Over here, looking at our pieces of data, we're looking for the one that does not belong. So first, we're going to go ahead and identify that outlier, and in this case, the outlier is going to be the Galapagos turtle, and that's because the rest of the data is all under 100, and the Galapagos tortoise is all the way up at 200, so it doesn't really fit with the rest of the data. The next thing we're going to do is calculate the mean, the median, and the mode, including that value. So the first thing we're going to do is calculate the mean. So 35 plus 30 plus 50 plus 200 plus 30 plus 70 plus 20. And when you add that all up, you are going to get 435. And then there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 data points. So you're going to divide that by 7, which gives you, after rounding, an answer of 62.14 years as the average lifespan. Then we're going to go ahead and we are going to find the median. So in order to do that, we know that we need to line our data up from least to greatest. So that's going to give us 20, 30, 30, 35, 50, 70, and 200. We know we need to cross out in order to find the middle number. So small, big, small, big, small, big, which leaves us with a median value of 35 years. And then we are looking for the mode, and the mode again is our most frequent, and the number that repeats the most is 30 years. So that's when we look at our data with the outlier. Now the next thing we want to do is do those same calculations without the outlier. So we're going to pretend like this value doesn't exist and see what happens. So now when we find the mean, we're going to go ahead and add 35 plus 30 plus 50 plus 30 plus 70 plus 20, which is essentially just taking 200 out from our old total. So our new total is 235, and now we're dividing that by 6 data points. And when we do that, after rounding, we're going to get 39.17 years as the average lifespan. Again, with the median, you still need to line up your values. So we've got 20, 30, 30, 35, 50, and 70. And then we need to cross off the smallest and the largest until we find the middle. So small, big, and we have 2 left in the middle. So when we do that, we add those up, giving us 65, and then don't forget to divide that by 2, because we're trying to find what's in the middle of that, and that's going to be 32.5. So our new median is 32.5 years. And then when we're looking at the mode, that has not changed. The number that is still most frequently occurring is 30. So a mode of 30 years. Now the question is, which measure changed the most? So the mean went from 62.14 down to 39.17. The median went from 35 to 32.5, and the mode was 30 and stayed at 30. So the one that changes the most to answer the question would be the mean. So the mean changed the most. It had the most dramatic difference between whether we included that outlier or not. Go ahead and try this one on your own. First, identifying the outlier, and then finding the mean, the median, and the mode, including that value. So your outlier is going to be the $14. That's much smaller than the rest of the data. Your mean is 48.57, median is 48, and then your mode is 47. Now I want you to go ahead and find the mean, the median, and the mode without the outlier, and then see what changes the most. So when we get rid of that 14, my mean is now $54.33, my median is $50, and my mode remains at 47. The value that changes the most is, again, the mean. So what you should have learned from these first two slides is that the mean is going to be what is most affected by an outlier. It's going to change the most when there is some sort of extreme value involved in our data set. So what does that actually tell us? That information is super helpful when we are trying to decide which measure of central tendency is most appropriate. People tend to lean to the mean first because finding an average is something that's very useful in most scenarios, but it can only be used when there is no outlier. So the mean is a good option for central tendency, but there cannot be an outlier. The median is our best option when there is an outlier. So there is an outlier. And the other thing that is super important about the median is there is no big gaps in the data. So that means if you have a list of number like 14, 16, 20, 21, and then all of a sudden it jumps to 53, 56, 57, that's not going to be a good set to use with the median because there's a big gap in the middle. So if there's this gap in the middle, then you would go back and use the mean. So if there is an outlier, you're going to use the median. If there is a gap or there's no outlier, you're going to use the mean. The mode should only be used when a value repeats 3 or more times. So if a number repeats twice, yes, it is a mode, but that's not a strong enough set within the data to argue that it is a good measure of central tendency. So it has to repeat at least 3 times in order for the mode to be viable. So we're going to go ahead and choose a measure of central tendency that's appropriate for the data, explain the selection, and then find the measure. When we are looking at this, we've got 112, 101, 97, 103, and 110. There are no big gaps in the data, but there also are no outliers. So since there is no outliers, the mean is going to be our best option for measure of central tendency. So because there's no outliers, the mean is the best option. So then it wants us to find the mean. So we're going to do 112 plus 101 plus 97 plus 103 plus 110. And when you add all of those up, you get 523. There are 5 data points, so we divide by 5, and that gives us that our mean is 104.6 metals. Because this is metals, you would go ahead and you would round that to 105. Go ahead and choose the measure on your own, explain your selection, and then tell me what the measure is. So for this one, the best one is the mode. There's a piece of data that repeats 3 times, so your answer is going to be $21.95. If you have questions about this or anything else from the lesson, please feel free to reach out and let me know.